This episode of the podcast is brought to you by New Bloom Labs.
If you're a cannabis producer that's frustrated with your testing lab, don't worry, you're not alone. Whether it's the long wait for your certificates of analysis, or inconsistent reports, or reports that are just hard to understand in general, most analytic labs do more to frustrate their customers than serve them. But it doesn't have to be that way. Instead, call New Bloom Labs. New Bloom Labs understands the cannabis industry and what's important to growers, processors, and manufacturers. New Bloom Labs offers the fastest turnaround time in the industry, delivering most test results in just one business day. So stop waiting for your test results, and instead, for superior science and rapid results, call New Bloom Labs at 844-TEST-CBD or visit their website at newbloomlabs.com. Superior science, rapid results, that's New Bloom Labs.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Cannabinoid Nation.
Let's face it, as an entrepreneur, starting, managing, or even scaling your business is a difficult task. And it's even more difficult in the cannabis or hemp industry. From keeping up with regulatory compliance to the importance of having adequate equipment such as water systems, lighting, nutrients, etc., operators face challenges on the daily that can be overwhelming and in most cases, not the best use of their time. Fortunately, the team of consultants and specialists at Cannabinoid Nation provide best-in-class industry solutions that aim to increase the likelihood of success for growers, processors, and manufacturers. Cannabinoid Nation is the industry's premier brokerage and consulting firm that helps cannabis and hemp operators with grow assessment consulting, white label, e-commerce, website development, digital marketing, and extraction services. The company also has trusted relationships with retail buyers to ensure that the growers and manufacturers they represent get the best price for their high-quality products. Visit their website to learn more about their solutions at cannabinoidnation.com. That's cannabinoidnation.com. Cannabinoid Nation, the cannabis industry's premier brokerage and consulting firm. Hello, my fellow people of the plant. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Cannabinoid Connect podcast, your favorite podcast that includes industry-facing conversations with the industry's leading experts that aim to educate and inform the public regarding the plant's endless benefits. My guest today is Jesse Elkins. He's the founder of Grow Industries, Inc. Hey, Jesse, how you doing?
Yeah, pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for making time for me in the audience today. It's a big day for Grow Industries. Congratulations on the announcement with your merger with GCorp. That's exciting, man.
Yeah, thank you very much. It is exciting. It's something I've been working on for a very long time. I honestly didn't think it would happen anytime soon, but here we are. So.
That's right. Yeah, it seems like, these big moments just kind of happen out of nowhere. You can't really plan or expect for them, So I'm really excited to be talking about that merger and kind of what that means for both entities now, as well as the industry at whole. But before we do that, Jesse, let's talk about, like how you said, you've worked long and hard many years over the past decade, from what I've read, to get to this point. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background? And how you got here.
Sure. Well, going back to the early 2000s. So I'm from Washington State, and we were one of the first states to legalize cannabis in the medical area. So 1998, we went medical. I graduated in 99. I went to refrigeration school. It was really just the right place at the right time. I knew some high school buddies that were into indoor growing cannabis, and they were doing it indoors, And one day a guy called me up and said, "Hey, I heard you do air conditioning. Can you come help me with a little project?" I went over there. It was a little, I would call now a very small little indoor home grow. I think he had 3 artificial lights. Put a little mini split in, an air conditioner. I figured out really quick that I actually had no idea why I was going there at the time, but I figured out really quick that these artificial lights put off a tremendous amount of heat, and you got to cool them down. Heat'll kill plants,
Yeah.
So I did his job, and didn't really hear much about it for a couple of years, actually. At the time, I was working for a large HVAC company in Seattle. So a referral from him came in a couple years later, and same sort of thing, a little bit bigger, but same idea. Went and did his. So that kind of progressed over the next several years, maybe 10 years. In 2007, I actually started.
To pause you there, just a quick question: did you have any experience consuming the plant at all before then, or was this just kind of like you stumbled upon this kind of burgeoning industry and you saw a place where you fit in?
Yeah, you know what? No, I wasn't using the plant then. I'll get to that, but it was many years later that I started trying it.
Okay, got you.
Yeah, so mainly because the company I worked for in Seattle, they drug test all the time. We were driving company vehicles and operating heavy equipment, that sort of thing.
Sure.
I was clean as a whistle, you know.
Right, right. Yeah, no, you have to
Um,
be. And I
so
mean, you got your job at stake, so you don't want to risk that. I get it. Yeah.
But I'll tell you, being in those indoor gardens was like one of the coolest things I had ever experienced, work wise. It wasn't just, going to work and putting in a air conditioner for a home or a business. It just, I can't describe the feeling of being in those indoor gardens and it just like it's like you're in another world,
I totally agree. I've been doing some visits as of recent, and I get the same feeling. There's this just, sense of life and energy and the smells and the aromas. It's a fascinating experience.
The
Yeah.
smells are crazy. They might have like a Kim 4 or I don't know all the strains off the top of my head, but these different strain or like a strawberry bliss, for example, it literally smells like strawberries. It's pretty cool.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. You're taking me back to that moment right now as you're explaining it. So
Yeah. So it was just a really cool thing to be a part of. I never thought it would turn into what it did, but I always loved to get those calls in. So fast forward to 2007, I was doing enough of these grows to actually go full time with it. So in 2007, I started my first company. At the time, we were just solely based on environments, which is one of the most important factors of an indoor sealed grow. But I had a company called Climagrow, and that's all we specialize in is putting in air conditioning, heating, a little bit of heating, dehumidification, and CO2 injection. At the time, everybody was burning CO2 in the rooms. We started ejecting pressurized CO2 into the rooms. So then things were going great for several years, but I think it was late 2013. We knew that Washington State was going to go recreational, and I believe it turned in 14. At that time, as soon as it went rec, we were putting out tons of advertising at that point, announcing to the world like, okay, we really are a cannabis dedicated company. Before that, it was just word of mouth. We didn't put it on the internet or like just put it out there. But in 2014, we released a lot of mailers out to everybody that had applied for the I-502 license, which is the recreational license in Washington. And that worked. We were the only company that did that. Up until then, we had a big reputation already. We had worked for some of the big brands, we'll call it, in Seattle, which was Fire Bros and RM Farms and a couple other ones. So the fact that we were trusted to do those jobs, it immediately said to all the smaller guys, okay, if they can do Fire Bros, they're good.
what was the scale? How big was that project?
So Fire Bros was probably one of the first 5 jobs that we did in 2014. They had two flower lights and probably right around 30 lights per room. That was pretty big back then.
Hmm.
The one before that was RM Farms. They had 2 flower rooms and they had 12 lights per room. So it started progressing pretty big. And by the end of 2014, we got a job called Cannabis, SIC Cannabis, in Skagit County, Washington. That was, to me, that was a monster job. 100, I believe it was 300 lights in that facility. So,
Wow.
we're getting to this point where it's like, man, this thing's real. This is my new career. This is full time. This is all we do. And it progressed from there. But in those couple of years of dedicating myself to the environment, I'm in all these different grow facilities all day long. I'm talking to all these different growers and owners and investors, and I'm seeing all the struggles they have. I mean, they're having massive struggles because this is a pretty new industry. It's not like there's a textbook, to show people how to design them or what environments to put in or how to handle
Right.
mass scale cannabis grow.
Y-
So
Yeah, I would imagine every use case is different, right? I mean,
yeah,
depending on what their end result is, what they're wanting, kind of dictates the equipment, the lighting, everything, right?
you're exactly right. So, I specialize in indoor grows. I don't do outdoor or hoop houses or a couple of hybrid greenhouses we've done where that's basically a sealed grow as well, but the ceiling opens up and you have bulletproof glass basically that lets the sun in. But as far as indoor sealed grows, there's a lot of different ways that I figured out that these growers grow. So I saw everything from people growing trees, meaning big, huge plants, 6 feet tall, one per light, maybe in a 5 gallon bucket of organic soil, and then over the years, I started really seeing it dialed down to a lot more smaller plants per light and maybe 2 gallon buckets, maybe 1 gallon, all the way down to 6 by 6 cube of Rockwell, or something like that. So there's just yeah, every single style that a grower grows, we have to cater to. So before we start working for a client, we do something called a feasibility study. It involves it involves a lot of us telling them how much this facility is truly going to cost. That's one thing that's underestimated all the time. But also, we have them fill out a questionnaire, and in that questionnaire, they have to tell us exactly exactly how they're growing. So they have to tell us, how many plants per light, how big are those plants when they flip, how big are those plants when they harvest, so the maximum height, how much water they're feeding these plants in a 24-hour period. These are all things, if it's organic or if it's synthetic nutrients. These are all things that factor on how much water those plants transpire, which we have to remove to get them down to their desired temperatures and humidity. So those are all factors that we have to really dial in.
Right. I would imagine also that you have some clients or customers that come to you that aren't currently operating, right? Like they want to get started. Maybe they've raised capital or whatnot. So how do you go about helping someone who can't really, answer those questions within the intake form that you mentioned?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It happens all the time. So an investor will come to us. Typically, if an investor is just thinking about it, a lot of times they've already kind of winged out and they found a team that's going to potentially be their team. So they'll have somebody called a head grower. So we get a lot of information from that head grower. If not, we've had plenty of investors come to us and ask us, "Hey, is there anyone around that's looking for this position, like a head grower position?" And we've hooked up a lot of companies with that position. Just because we hands down know more growers than any grower would know other growers. We know them all.
Right.
And we have a huge list of growers that are looking for different positions, willing to travel, all the way out from Seattle to Boston, or something. If that happens, if investors come to us and they're looking for that team, we can easily put together that team for them or help them, point them in the right direction.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, operating since 2007, like when you guys first got started, you mentioned, I would imagine that your network has grown. You've built trusted relationships with credible, entities, and so it's kind of easy to kind of match make at that point, if in fact the client needs that. Right.
Yeah, it's nothing we charge for or anything, but we're happy to help in any way we can. I mean,
Right.
ultimately, we want them to move forward and have us design a facility for them. So we'll do whatever we can to help them.
Yeah, I love that mindset, man, because that's kind of how I think every companies should be operating right now is kind of, help first, kind of trying to progress this industry forward and make the plant more accessible to people, whether it be for medicinal purposes or recreational purposes. And so let's talk about helping, right? So with this recent announcement, it's clear that the cannabis industry is growing at an exponential rate, and the more operators that are entering the space, they're faced with a number of different challenges, whether it be lack of resources, limited bandwidth, missing equipment, all that types of stuff. So tell me about how this merger will kind of help with some of those challenges. And let's reverse engineer that. Let's first talk about the challenges. What are some of the biggest challenges that operators face, and how are y'all going to be able to help?
Yeah, so I mean, the biggest challenge is having the correct amount of funds to build one of these. In my opinion, indoor grow facilities are probably one of the most expensive manufacturing plants that you could ever build, by like price per square foot. So
Why is that, Jesse?
you
Why is
know,
that?
so many different. Let's take for a factor. That's one of the most important keys to an indoor facility. It needs a humongous amount of air conditioning and dehumidification equipment. So if you've got like a 5,000 square foot building, like a little commercial building, you might spend a couple grand putting a little HVAC system in there. If you got a 5,000 square foot manufacturing facility for cannabis, throw that couple grand out the window and you're more like $500,000. It's just
Wow.
not even comparable at all. So that's one of the biggest things. Then you got everything just like the lights themselves. Nowadays, everybody's kind of turning towards LED. One light fixture is $1,400. Um, then you have your automation in the building. You're looking at 80 grand just for a mother control board. Just that's going to run all of this. I mean, it's just I could go on and on, but it's everything in there is just very, very expensive. So the biggest challenge is investors come to us and they say, or growers, a lot of growers don't know how much it truly takes too, because maybe they've come from a home grow situation. So the biggest challenge is they come to us and they want to do a 50,000 square foot facility and they have 1.2 million bucks. We have to be the bearer of bad news and say, look, I mean, yeah, you can build a building and maybe throw some lights in, but if you want this done correctly, you're 12, 14, 15 million bucks in. You're a long way,
Wow.
and we want to help everybody. So if that's their max budget, we will go to them and suggest, hey, instead of building 50,000 square feet, like maybe you can do the whole structure, because the structure is cheap compared to the rest.
Right.
Maybe do that, but let's start off with two little flower rooms with 12 lights in them in a piece or something, and you can get a high quality product out of those rooms, kind of build your brand over the years, and then later down the road when you have some revenue freed up, then you can kind of expand as you go and eventually come up with that money. So that would be our biggest suggestion to that hardship is
Right.
well.
And I think that that's the right approach, right? I mean, it sounds so basic, but I'm so surprised to continue to hear these stories, and I think it's a good thing, right? It's like I feel like there's so much capital kind of flooding in the cannabis industry right now that people just kind of want to write a check, throw down money, and get to the end of the finish line, right? And
Right.
like anything in business, right? Like any other industry, it's always starting with an MVP or a prototype, right? You kind of test that out, see if it works, and then you build upon it. You
Yeah.
improve, you scale, and that's kind of business 101, but we have to remind ourselves, I think, in the cannabis industry that we need to take that approach, that crawl, walk, run approach, instead of write a check and sprint, you know.
Absolutely right. I mean, you couldn't have said it better. That goes for any business, even my business in 2013. we were expanding just as fast as the clients were. And you always have hardships when you're or struggles when you're expanding that fast,
Right. Yeah, I'm sure that Mark Zuckerberg, when he was at Harvard trying to build Facebook, wasn't thinking about a marketplace. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
he's added that as a component of his platform. But so and so I want to also ask you, so outside of the capital challenges, the managing of expectation challenges, I'm sure there's also the lack of know-how, right? In this space. And I think that that's where GCorp adds that value, right? Because you guys kind of have the build outs of indoor grow cultivation sites. You've got extraction lab build outs. You've got all that down, equipment, lighting, and then they kind of come in on the management/consulting side, whether it be data analysis, things like that. Correct?
Yeah, so you asked what's one of the most exciting things about G Corp here. For a long time, I've seen in the industry, I've always worked with my client's budget, so I've never been able to build something that I saw in my head that I really, really wanted to build this passionate, awesome, state of the art facility because I was always restricted by the client's budget, which is fine. But I've always had that in there, like, man, I really just want to build the best anyone's seen. With G Corp, they own a company called Bountiful Farms. It was their first actual cannabis grow facility. That's how we met. They hired me to design it, and I ended up later building it for them as well. But I saw these guys did have the capital, man. I told them I want to put this in there, I want to put that in there, and they're like, okay, yeah, here basically
Wow.
an open checkbook. You design it the way you want to. So man, I got to build one of the most state of the art facilities anyone's ever seen. It was finished in late 2019. I
That
released
must have been so much fun for you. Oh man.
it was dream come true. Um, I released a lot of pictures online, like on Instagram, we use most of, and it was just going crazy. People were just freaking out about how clean and professional it looked, just state of the art. So, with that said, G Corp is going to, back to that. One of my biggest goals is from the time someone hires us to start looking into placement of the facility, design it, blueprints, bids, contracting, getting it built, all that. What I want to do is I really, really want to build these turnkey facilities and then put them up for sale, maybe when they're 90% done or 100% done. And I want to offer growers or investors, hey, here's a facility turnkey, ready to go. We'll buy it, we'll hand you the keys, finish getting a license and start growing in a month from now.
Wow.
Instead of that 2.5 or 3 years, I've had some clients upwards of 4 years after they hire us to actually get it built, or to be able to grow in it. So what my vision is I want to see facilities all over the nation, like in all the legal states, where when we get contacted, they can literally just come buy the facility, and it's actually going to save them it's actually probably going to save them a lot of money trying to do it themselves, because one of the biggest things I see is, for instance, in 2017, almost 50% of our business was retrofitting brand new facilities that were already done that we weren't a part of, but they realized right away that nothing, especially the environments, weren't even close to keeping up with their demand. So they would call us and have us come retrofit and get it on queue. That ends up costing 2 or 3 times the amount of money. So just doing it the right way is the best way and the least expensive way in the beginning. So G Corp's going to provide us.
That is amazing. I think that's an incredible business model. One, because it's a huge differentiator. I don't know anybody doing that. But two, it's like you're proactively building out these facilities, whether it be, like you said, indoor cultivation, extraction labs. They're going to be needed as this industry continues to grow, and you can do that proactively because you know that you're going to have investors coming in and wanting to buy up those places.
Right, right. I've hinted about this on the internet in the last couple of years, and like immediately we get calls up like, "Hey, where's this building at? We'll buy it right now." It's like, no, no, no. It's just an idea. We're just kind of feeling out the marketplace. But yeah, there's going to be a huge demand for it. We'll definitely have a waiting list.
Have you considered so if we shift gears and we look at the industrial hemp side, right? And we think about growing hemp for material goods,
Mhm.
the biggest kind of bottleneck right now is infrastructure, and it's those processing plants that actually do the decortication where they separate the fiber from the herd, right? So that you can. So is that something that y'all are thinking about as well? Because man, talk about really allowing that side of that sector of the industry to take off. That's the missing puzzle right now. I mean, that's the reason why hemp clothing and hemp goods cost so much,
Right,
because the
right.
lack of processors, you
You
know?
know, I have a very small amount of growers that grow hemp. One of the big farms is in Oregon. There, it's an outdoor hemp farm. But you know, I've never really. I mean, I know the struggle of it, of the process to make clothing or or anything else. But I've never really leaned into that direction. I've just been so busy on the other side
Right.
with the THC side,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's something that I would love to get into in the future. I mean, it would definitely be big.
Hey man, well maybe we could talk later on about it, because I see that as just a huge opportunity. If somebody cracks that nut, it's just going to allow, and that's where really we start to talk about industries competing with each other. It takes a lot longer to grow a tree, and and get cotton and or make paper out of the tree or whatnot, as opposed to hemp paper that you can
Oh
cultivate
yeah.
every 90 days.
Oh, I know, it's insane. I mean, I've seen, big, large cannabis plants. We call them trees as well, just to define how big they are. But yeah, in 8 months, you're growing like that size.
I
um,
know, right?
I mean, it's insane how fast they grow. It's just crazy.
Yeah, and when we think about sustainability and lowering CO2 emission levels and things like that, the more hemp we can grow, there's no other plant that takes in more CO2 emissions. So it just seems like a really good path to take, from an economic, environmental, and medicinal perspective. So speaking of sustainability, Jesse, this is going to be more of a tough question, but I have to ask it because there's a lot of good news coming out of the cannabis industry right now, and you know that the prohibitionists have their scopes set on the industry, and they're going to try to pick apart any kind of bad news that they can get, right? And
Right.
some articles that I've been reading have talked about energy consumption when it comes to indoor cultivations. Is there anything that you're trying to do to kind of reduce, the energy amount that is put out with these indoor facilities, and what can we do in the future, from a long-term sustainability standpoint?
Yeah, no, that's a great question as well. Yes, for years now, we've been trying to get that carbon footprint down, and make these facilities more sustainable. So,
Mhm.
so here's what I personally do. Well, first off, the industry is definitely moving towards LED lights. So instead of using these 1200 watt HID, like a double walled HID big bulb, we're switching to LED, which is typically around 630 watts. For the same amount of canopy, so it's not quite half, but it's close to 50% power consumption right there alone. There's another way is we have all this massive equipment in there for HVAC and dehumidification. So one thing that's really cool that we just found out about in the last 2 years is we can recover 70%. So let's say you start your facility off, you're putting 100% water into the facility. We can recover 70% of that water, reclaim it, run it through an RO, reverse osmosis, and reuse that water captured from the dehumidifiers themselves. So on power wise, on water wise, there's two ways that we're close to 50 and over 50% on water consumption. That's what I've personally done so far.
Hmm.
But every single day, we're continuing to try to figure out ways to make them more sustainable.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's not going to happen overnight. And, the technology, it's kind of piecemeal, right? You kind of find one thing that works better and is more efficient, and you kind of plug that in.
One
Um,
one thing I want to say about that is, a lot of people would say, well, why don't you just grow outdoors, or in a greenhouse, and you don't need artificial lights, right? Well, with the state, I want to make this a point with the state regulatory, it's, I mean, if they find anything in that plant, everything has to be tested before it goes to the consumer. If they find, let's say, mold or powdery mildew or spider mites or anything in there, it has to be 100% clean to
mhm.
pass. Outdoor grown, it's more than likely it's going to have powdery mildew or PM or mold or bud rot mold inside of it. I mean, it's just almost impossible to grow a product like that that's going to pass. I mean, it might look great and the consumer might not even know, but under microscopic, it's going to show something. It's not going to pass that state. That's their regulations. So therefore, what's really the only way to get that product passed is to grow it in a sealed indoor grow facility.
Hmm. Yeah, and from what I've seen on the greenhouse side is like once you harvest, there's a washing process, right? Like before you dry. So my assumption is that with an indoor grow, is that step skipped? Like, is there no need to wash because of how it's in such a controlled environment and it's cleaner?
No, you're exactly right. I mean, in most states, I don't know if you know what neem oil is. It's something you can buy at Home Depot or Lowe's or anywhere. They claim you can drink it. I mean, it's like it's non-toxic, but um, like the states are so restrict on the regulations, you can't even use that. I mean, you literally cannot use any pesticides whatsoever. You can't, nothing. so
Right.
so no, there's no reason to rinse the product at all. You cut it, you or harvest, you dry it, and you trim and package it, and that's it. There's no other steps to it.
Wow. And I mean, and I would also think that one could argue that in an indoor grow facility, you have so much more control that your opportunity to grow higher quality cannabis is much higher than a
Yeah,
greenhouse.
yeah, much higher. And quality and quantity both. So I have clients now that are reaching. They're well over 40% THC, but or excuse me, they're well over 30% THC, but now they're hitting 40% total cannabinoids, which five years ago, I did not know anybody that could hit 30%. So it's. I mean, the quality is going up very quick, but it's all about the fact that you're indoors. You can control that environment 24/7. So imagine outside where the plants naturally came from. They might have a couple days out of the year where it's like that absolute perfect environment.
Hmm.
So indoors, you have that absolute perfect environment every single day. And so, yeah, so the quality and quantity is just enormous.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, I could definitely see that. And it's good, like I said again, that y'all are taking steps to be more, conscious of the carbon footprint and whatnot. Because that too is very important. So
Yeah,
Jesse, no,
sorry.
go ahead.
Based on that, one thing I forgot is we did a job in Adelanto, California, and they're starting to have the Renewable Energy Act, especially for cannabis growing, but I believe it's for all manufacturing. We were able to put in solar there. It takes like 20 acres to do. 4,000 amps of solar, basically,
Right.
uh, or 3 megawatts. But they had the property, and so we got them over 42% renewable. It was like 48% renewable energy there. So that's something we barely just dove into, but it's something that we'll keep looking into, and cogen systems as well. So
Hmm.
we'll get there. I definitely know. In the next couple of years, we'll be at 50% renewable energy.
Oh man, I have no doubt about it. No, I have no doubt about that you guys will get there. And I want to talk. So speaking of like what's to come in the future, as we wrap up, Jesse, tell us. You touched on, the merger. What's to come? Is there anything else you want to expand upon and leave the audience with?
Yeah, a couple of things. In the past, I've invented a couple of things. I have some provisional patents. There because it was such a new industry. We've had to, myself and every grower out there, we've had to innovate every single day to try to streamline this. Now that I'm not running a company anymore myself, I'm hoping it frees up some time for me to. I've got 30 something odd ideas that I want to introduce to the marketplace. So I'm going to keep working on that. But the biggest thing is, when you hire Grow Industries, you're hiring us, so you can get that high, safe, quality product onto the marketplace, which is going to build your brand and ultimately make you very profitable. So that's the biggest message for hiring Grow Industries.
It's great. It's a great advice to give. Where can people find y'all's website and social media if they want to learn more?
So at Grow Industries Inc. on Instagram and growindustriesinc.com is our website. Definitely check out the Instagram. We've been running that since 2013 or 14. You can we've posted jobs of every single job we've ever done. Since then, I believe we've finished up around 78 jobs, which doesn't sound like a lot, but man, when it takes a couple years
It's a
per
lot.
job.
Yeah.
Um, but we talk about all of our clients on there. We tag them. Every single job we've ever been a part of, we are on a good relationship with on a continuing basis. So where we tag them, you can even hit them up yourself and ask how we did. But every single job we've tagged them, showed some pictures here and there throughout the build out process, and then the finished product, which is always awesome, posting pictures of this beautiful flower.
Hmm.
So that's the biggest thing to check out is that Instagram at Grow Industries Inc.
Awesome. Well, you heard it from him first, guys. Make sure you check out their Instagram. And truly, Jesse, congratulations, man. I know that you put in a lot of hard work and blood, sweat, and tears over the years, and it's exciting to see where you've come. And always like to see that the good guys, do well. So hopefully we can see some of these facilities start to pop up throughout the country, and we can push this industry forward in all the different sectors. So
Right
thanks
on.
again. Thanks again for your time, man. Really appreciate all right.
Yeah. Thanks, Kevin. Nice meeting you.
Yes. And thank you all for listening. Bye.
Bye.